All right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back. Hope everyone is doing very well. In today's video, I want to go over the question: do you know how much money you need to retire? Now, we have our fancy financial independence calculator here, and this is going to help us provide a little bit of context to what our goals are over the long term. And what I really like about this as well is if anybody has ever read the book Seven Habits of Highly Successful People by, I think it's Stephen Covey, one of the habits in that book is starting with the end goal in mind. And I really think that's like it's such a valuable way to approach this because I think what it does is when you have that overarching sort of like big target defined and in place, it makes it a lot easier to then like reverse engineer the goals and be like, okay, well, this is my goal over the next, 30, 40 years, whatever that looks like. And now what are the things that I need to do on a yearly, monthly, weekly, daily basis in order to hit my goals over the long term? So that's really what is, why we're going to go over this in this video here. So first off, I wanted to frame this video in a few ways, and I have some notes here that I wanted to cover, just because I think like this topic is something that I find very fascinating. It's something that I am actively pursuing, and I think the words that we use matter, and the way that we are framing the terms that we use around this stuff are very important. And the other thing that I wanted to just frame at the beginning of this video here is adding context to our goals. I think that is so important. Like rather than just saying like I want to be a millionaire, I want to be I want to retire. Like adding context and defining that and putting details around that and making it actual real, of what that means specifically for your life. I think it makes it a lot easier to attract those things in your life, to work towards those things. And again, the whole idea behind this is being, just trying to be a little bit better with, the intention behind our time, the money that we spend, acting with purpose, intention, having clarity and confidence in our actions and being able to, pursue our path that, really only needs to make sense to you. It doesn't need to, translate, or, other people on the outside may not necessarily understand your decisions that you're making. But if you have your goal and your blueprint defined and down, then you can feel confident of pursuing that on your own. So again, the first thing that I want to just pose to everybody here is the idea of like the question is, what do you think of when you hear the word retirement? Now, I think a lot of people, go into like, I don't have to work anymore. I finally get to like enjoy my life, or, I'm going to travel, or I get to have peace. And, once I get to retirement or this certain age, then like finally I get to, enjoy my life and be happy, sort of in a sense. And I think, the idea behind this, and again, this is just my belief, but I think what we are truly after when we hear the word retirement is the feeling that we feel like is going to come from being able to retire, of like, great, now I get to, again, I get to, have total control over my time. And that's really the big thing, is like having control over your time. Now, again, I wanted to define retirement and sort of replace that word with the phrase financially independent, and just defining financial independence as the passive income that you are earning from your working capital is exceeding your monthly expenses or your annual expenses in that sense. So again, the income that I'm earning from my, my money that is invested, the interest, the yield that I'm earning from that is able to support my lifestyle on on an annual basis. The money that I'm earning from that supports my lifestyle and also pays the taxes that I would need to pay on that income. Like that provides, you're completely self-sufficient. You have total, autonomy. You get to do, what you want, when you want, with who you want, sort of in a sense. Now, again, I think the idea behind that is like, that doesn't need to be delayed, or, I put that in this like arbitrary sort of imaginary idea of like, okay, when I get to 65, then I get to enjoy my life. It's just like, well, yes, in a sense, if you are, if you have the right sort of financial structure in place, you've been actively working towards that goal, you have the, right amount of money actively, actually allocated in the right sort of, in the right, financial kind of blend of like your portfolio. And again, this isn't financial advice. I highly suggest anybody, consulting with a licensed financial advisor or professional. That's certainly, I'm not a licensed advisor, so this is not financial advice, but these are the things and the questions that I've asked myself, and the sort of, I wouldn't even say answers, but like the better questions that I then ask myself that have, led me on this path and have just helped me, kind of frame this a little bit more for myself. So again, I just really believe in prioritizing now, making the changes and the shifts now. And, and the idea of like, I don't want to delay this feeling that I am after, and sacrificing my life and feeling like I need to live, I need to work in a job that I really don't like, with people that, I really don't enjoy, doing work that isn't very stimulating or, or interesting to me, just because I want to then earn, I want to do that for 30, 40 years. And then I finally get to enjoy my life when, I'm at an age where maybe I don't have the health to be able to enjoy that amount of money that I've earned. Again, I just think it's flipping it on its head and being like, okay, I can definitely lock in my long-term wealth building goals. But I then want to be like, well, I want to enjoy my time as much as possible as I'm pursuing that goal. Like, that target is great. And having a very big goal is great. But like the journey to that is really where like, that's like the whole idea of like, maximizing the experience of your life. Like, I think that's just so valuable there. So that's first things first, is just, framing the idea of retirement in, a financial independent space of being like, okay, I know what this really means now. It's having enough passive income, to, exceed my expenses so that I can live off of that. And if you want to, define that number, how much money you really need to retire, the equation behind that is taking your monthly expenses. So, and it's a valuable exercise because then it forces you to like take stock of like where your money is going on a monthly basis. But let's just say it takes me 8K a month to support my lifestyle. I'm going to times that by 12. So I think that's like right at 96,000, I believe what it is. Let's just take 10K a month for, good example purposes. So times that by 12, that gives you 120K a year. And then dividing that by 0.1 gets you 1.2 million that you would need to have actively invested to be able to earn, if you're earning a 10% yield off of that, I can take that draw and I can, essentially live off of that and sustain my lifestyle. And I never, have to work again, essentially. So that's the financial independence. Now, the other part of it is adding more context to your goals. I don't think it's just enough to be like, I want to be a millionaire, or, I want to have this, this X amount of like money. I think, and I've been reading a book recently called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. It's a great, great book. I've read a lot of books on, investing in wealth and sort of like pursuing like the finances, that side of things. And this book has put things in a perspective that, I just haven't seen so like articulated so succinctly and in like a really nice sequence and a good, kind of like breaking down all the things that like you sort of need to just like have a good grasp of to be able to like pursue wealth. And what I really like about that book is like the idea of like living life by design. Like the book is like all about, putting things in detail of like the houses you want to own, the cars you want to own, vacations you want to take, the work you want to do, the businesses you want to build, the people you want to do it with, the environment you want to work in, the environment you want to sleep in, the food you want to eat, like all the stuff. If you like really define and design that stuff down and get very detailed with it, and then that's the stuff that you're pursuing, I think like that's a much more like fruitful way to live. It's a much more like stimulating and exciting way to live rather than just being like, I want to be a millionaire. Like that, having no context to that, like I mean, there's nothing, I'm not going to knock it. It's great if that's the way that you want to live your life, more power to you. That's great. It's an awesome goal to have. But I think, providing like a little bit more detail to it and making it feel real, I think it'll just make it a more almost like enjoyable experience, which again, like the idea behind this is just maximizing, our experience and our time as we're pursuing this in the first place. So those are the two things, like framing retirement in a sense of like, I get to choose to work if I really want to, like that's the idea behind it. And then the other thing is like having context to our goals. And now on the, work sort of in a sense, like I heard this from Alex Hormozy. If nobody is familiar with him, he's badass entrepreneur doing things at a level that like it is really, really like inspiring and impressive, and just like he's doing it, he's at the for sure top of his game. It's really, really, it's a joy to be able to, consume content from him, entertain, and see like the lessons that he has learned. Like it is really, really cool. So one of the things he says is the work works on you more than you work on it. And I love that. And I think work is like such an essential part of life. And so, the idea of like behind work is like, again, that's another thing of like the words that we use. Like when people think of work and the context behind it, it's like, I'm doing something that I really don't want to do. And that's just, again, you are sacrificing your time for this imaginary idea of like, I'm going to have all of my time back when I'm 65. It's just like, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait 30, 40 years to like finally enjoy my life. Like if I can lock my long-term wealth building in place, but also then come back to the here and now and be like, well, I want to maximize my hours and my days as much as possible and still being able to hit my goals, then, again, I'm flipping the things and I'm pursuing something that, again, only maybe I can see and make sense to me. But man, that life is a life well lived, in my opinion. So, more power to you if you can go after that. So now, the other thing that I want to go over real quick before we jump into the calculator is, and I talked about this in a recent podcast with my buddy Clay. If nobody's listened to that yet, or if you haven't listened to it yet, definitely go back and check it out. he is, such a big thinker. So just like I've always been such a, very, very grateful to be able to be around his energy and just to, learn from the things that and the way that he approaches things. But we talked about the sequence. We talked about it like randomly on a call that we had just like one-on-one. And then we talked about it on the podcast as well. Like the sequence sort of to follow is first and foremost, paying down your debt, or, having a control over the amount of debt that you have. I'm a big believer in like zero consumer debt. I think, you definitely can leverage and structure debt in the right way, obviously to, if you are leveraging debt and that's, earning you cash flow, it could be, obviously an asset for you. But I also think like having debt on your books, increases your risk exposure. And I like the idea of like, I don't owe anything to anybody. And I really like that idea. I'm not like, opposed to like having a mortgage and, owning a home. I think there's, value in that. And, again, that needs to, make sense in the context of your life. Don't, just take a blanket statement that like home ownership is the best way to wealth. If it makes sense for you, great, do it. And it definitely is. But the idea behind that is like, the wealth that you're building in that is the equity in your home. That's not necessarily liquid. Like if I have, if I'm, worth $500,000 because that's the amount of equity that I have in my home, that's not necessarily like actively working for me. And it's not earning me any income. I'm not earning like a yield or an interest off of that. So again, like reframing the idea of like, I want $1.2 million actively working and invested for me that's earning an income. And that's what's going to be able to sustain my lifestyle. Now, owning that home provides me shelter and security and structure, which is great. So that's first things first, paying down the debt. Next thing was adding cash reserves and having cash on hand, which provides, again, structure and stability and liquidity. And it makes you, a little bit, you can pounce on decisions if opportunities present themselves. That's great. The next thing is locking in your long-term wealth building. And that's what I want to talk about here. Now, beyond that, again, if you want to see kind of like the rest of the sequence, definitely go back and listen to that video. But that's what I want to talk about here is like kind of the idea of locking in your long-term wealth building and sort of providing a little bit more context and making that feel real. The other thing I wanted to say is if you haven't watched the last video on how much money do I need to make, or how much money do you really need to make, definitely I encourage going back and checking that out too. There's a nice equation that I go over in that video that like, again, provides sort of like the idea of like, this is the amount of money that I need to be earning to support the lifestyle that I want to live. And the buckets behind that are like, okay, so let's talk about this calculator first. So first things first, what you see in here is my date of birth, the total amount that I have invested. And again, this is just like example purposes, what I'm contributing to those investments on a monthly basis, my annual return, my drawable return. This is basically like the amount of money that I could take away from, the principal amount or the interest that I'm earning against that. And then inflation is higher than this. This calculator is giving me a little trouble, so I can't really adjust it right now. So we're just going to leave that alone. But just understand that inflation is definitely higher than 4%. Even what they're probably reporting to us, it's probably a lot higher than that. But that is besides the point. So what I want to do in this video is, if I know that 1.2 million is the amount of money that I need to, if I hit that goal, that allows me to then, live, I can sustain myself on that amount of money, earning that 10% yield, that gets me 120K a year in passive income. I can live off of that and not touch my principal, and that principal can continue to just be invested, and I can earn, I can live off of that, on a yearly basis. And again, I have total, I'm self-sufficient. I'm on, I have total control over, my time, what I do. If I want to work, I can choose to work. Again, all that idea. So now what this equation basically becomes is working against that amount of time. So I see here, based on what I'm doing here, that means that I'm going to hit that 1.2 million net worth mark in about 48 years. And I want you guys to keep that number in mind as we go through this exercise here, because you'll see just like the power and the value of, acting with intention, having the right numbers, having the right allocations, and understanding like sort of the right numbers, and again, being purposeful behind, putting things in the right place, and acting really, really, really very much with intention behind this. So that's first things first, that 47 years to that 1.2 million of net worth mark. So what are the levers that I can pull in my direction to be able to speed that path up to financial independence? Really, the big things that you can do are the total amount that you have invested, what you're contributing on a monthly basis, and then what that annual return looks like. Now, that annual return, that 10% is sort of like the accepted what you can earn from, the S&P 500, which is just an index fund. It's like buying the, a spread of the best companies in the US, across the board. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but if you, are interested in something like that, definitely consult with someone that is a licensed financial professional. Now, the two things that we're going to focus on here, I'm going to leave the annual return alone. If you definitely can obviously earn, more than that, but you may find yourself in a little bit of a riskier asset class, or it may just require a little bit more time than you're willing to put in. Essentially, you can just buy, an index fund on a monthly basis, totally automated, and just, over time, you're going to hit that goal, just by doing that on a consistent monthly basis. So here are the two things that we can pull in our direction. That's the total amount that we have invested and what we're contributing on a monthly basis. So let's just add, I'm going to, just add some zeros to the end here. So again, keep this idea in mind of the 47 years. Let's say I can bump this total amount invested from $1,000 to $10,000. Let's just see what that looks like. See how that affects our number. So that just shaved about, let's say, 6-ish years off of that number. That's awesome. Now that $10,000 is invested. If I want to maximize out my, let's just say like a Roth IRA, if that's 6K annual year or annual, contribution limit that you can put into that. It's $500 a month. So let's just do that. So that shaved 12 years off. So we started at 40, almost 48 years. And now we've shaved almost 18 years off of, getting that total amount invested up to that 10K and maximizing this out at the monthly contribution of $500 a month in that Roth IRA. When I am 65, or 60, I think it's 65 and a half or 68, 67 and a half. I forget those numbers. Have the ability to like take, what's the word? Withdrawals from that account totally tax free. That's, tax exempt at that point. So you can basically live off of that at that moment. So let's just see what that would be like when we are 65. That gives us a $3 million, being able to have that $10,000 in there and maximizing my contribution. If I just do that for, the next 40 years, I'm going to have $3 million just in that. And I'm good to, I'm basically good to rock. I'm good. So again, the idea behind this is like, how can I shorten that time down as much as possible to be able to, what are the things that I got to do in my direction to be able to, hit that goal at a much, quicker pace, sort of in a sense. And the rest of this that you see, if I wanted to earn, my passive income goal, of 100K a year, I'm going to hit that, again, this is adjusted for inflation. But again, you can see the power of being able to work your way against that and having the right intention, having the right numbers, and having the right model in place. So again, let's go back to, in the last video, I talked about the three kind of buckets of having the right financial targets. So let's say I wanted to earn, 250K a year, and the three buckets of that is my burn. That's my expenses, my taxes I got to pay on that because I'm a business owner, self-employed. I got to pay taxes on that, and then the rest of the surplus. Once the debt is paid down, once I have the cash reserves on hand, my burn is accounted for. Let's just say like I'm going to live off 100K a year. Off that 250K in taxes, I probably got to pay like 75K, and then I can invest the difference, which is about another 75K, which I believe is about 6K a month. So let's just do that real quick. So I got $10,000 invested. Let's just see what happens. If I'm able to invest $6,000 a month, let's just see what that's going to do. So now that gets me to that millionaire net worth mark in a little bit less than a decade, in about 10 years when I'm 35. So again, you can see the power of like being able to do this. Now, when I hit that 65, instead of being a millionaire then, or I'm literally worth, what is this, 30 or 10 times that 3 million. Now I'm worth $30 million. Like I'm in that 8-figure net worth mark. Like that is, I think there's this book called How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis. He's he founded Maxim Magazine. That book is really interesting because there's like a wealth table in there that like breaks down like the net worth marks of being like, this is like rich, this is like super rich, ultra rich, like crazy wealthy rich. Like basically, I think he was saying that like you're not really even rich until you hit that like 8-figure net worth mark, which is just like, man, I was just like, oh man, I really got to set some bigger goals and like really think bigger and set just like bigger, higher standards. Cause like, man, that time is going to pass anyway. So why not like pursue these biggest goals as much as possible? Because again, like the idea behind it is like, if I have this, in isolation, that number really doesn't mean anything. Like getting there, like it doesn't really mean anything unless like the experience that you have within the hours and the time and control over your time and what you're doing with it is something that you enjoy and you get to, maximize your life as much as possible. Like that's really, again, the idea behind this whole, this exercise and what we're doing here is like having total, intention behind your life, and acting very purposely behind that. So I'm going to cut this here. I think this is, at least again, valuable of just like providing, some context of like operating in the right sense. Again, the idea is like being a millionaire or being, having these goals, like it's not as, it doesn't need to be as difficult as possible. It doesn't need to be as like daunting as, some people may feel like it needs to be. Like if you really put this into, what you need to be doing on a monthly and yearly basis to hit your goals over the long term, it makes it very easy to be like, you know what, I can find, $100 a month, $500 a month to put into, this investment that's going to, allow me to live complete. Like I'm paying myself over the long term. Like I'd rather prioritize that than maybe, a higher car payment or, going out to eat, I love to go out to eat, of course, but like if the other thing about this as well, and look at me, I go on these rants, I don't know how to stop talking about this stuff because I love it so much. The other thing that I'll leave you with is, if you need to, make that I want to contribute that $500 a month, and you're like, well, I can't do that in my, the amount of money that I'm earning right now. The idea, there's the mindset of either like, I need to figure out how to like save more money and like shave off expenses and be able to like allocate that correctly. Or it's, I need to go out and earn more money. Like I just need to go out and earn an extra 6K a year to be able to do that. Like when you figure that out and you're like, oh, I need to just go and earn more money, then you're like, okay, I need to learn a skill or I need to do these things. Like it flips everything on your head and you become almost in like again, acting with intention and purpose and being a productive sort of like approach to it rather than like, I need to save and sort of like, I'm going to save my way to being a millionaire. It's like, I need like the idea behind it is like, I need to have enough productive capital like allocated correctly so that my interest is earning me, the ability to just live off of that, totally, self-sustaining, self-sufficient, I have total autonomy. I know I'm repeating myself and I'm ranting at this point. Again, I love this stuff. I want to just leave you guys all with the idea of like, don't delay your, getting to enjoy your life for this imaginary, isolated idea of being, of retiring at this completely imaginary or arbitrary age that, again, not to be like negative, but like you may not actually get to make it to that point. So like if you are just delaying and delaying and delaying and not enjoying your life, and then all of a sudden, you don't get that, you don't have the health or the time, or you don't have the circumstances to be able to enjoy finally your retirement, then like, man, that's just, I guess you kind of missed the point. And I want people to be able to enjoy that time as much as possible and maximize their time on this planet and your earth or, this life as much as possible. I just think, that's really the whole idea behind this video. So again, hopefully this is, valuable for anybody out there watching. Hopefully, you got some good lessons from this. Please, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment if you thought this was helpful. If you want to get access to this calculator, shoot me an email at support@systemsofwealth.co. I'd love to get you access to this and you can play around with it on your own as well. But again, thank you all for watching. Thank you for your time, energy, effort, and attention. To all my builders out there, I salute you. Keep on rocking. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.